live. All right. So thank you again for joining us. Yeah, as I said, feel free to stay muted or to unmute if you prefer, as we typically sit that way, and you use your camera or not. This is a little bit of an experiment. I've been meeting with Stephanie, Gemma, and Peter over the last 6 months regularly to talk, to explore, and our conversations have been far-reaching. And we thought we'd open up our last conversation to everybody. And so it's really wonderful to have the circle just a little bit wider. We're really careful about making sure that this is a place for us to be vulnerable and transparent. So we'll extend that to you as well. That means that we speak from our own perspective, from an I perspective, but we are here to listen and learn and explore. We'll see where the conversation goes tonight. And I also encourage you to use oops, ouch principles if anything should arise that feels like you have heard something that you find challenging personally, or that reflects a different experience from your own. We call that out. We say that's not been my experience, and that has made me feel a certain way. It helps us move the conversation forward. It's always good to just put that out on the table. But yes, thank you for joining us for our artist conversation with our SoloStage artists, Stephanie Lazenby, Gemma Soldati, and Peter Josephson. So I'm going to start typically how we usually do. We'll roam around conversation for a while, but our guests who are in the circle tonight as well, feel free to jump in when you'd like. Or if you'd rather participate by asking a question or a suggestion, you can also put it in the chat too. But this is just an open forum, like it's been for 6 months, guys, 6 months. So I'm going to ask my artists, similar to how we usually do, let's check in, let's say hello to one another. And today, let's think about how we feel in terms of pieces of clothing. Describe where you are at today, how you're feeling, where you are. You can think about our 6-month process. You can also think about your last 30 minutes, right? We're just settling ourselves into the space. If you were to describe yourself as a piece of clothing, what are you feeling like? And let that roam in wherever you want it to go in order to bring yourself into the room. Is there Stephanie, Gemma, Peter, anybody who wants to jump in?
That's there's like, what is the piece of clothing that is you, right? Like your soul's clothing. And then it's like, what mood are you in today, right? So I'm trying to like separate the two and be like, what clothing am I today? You know what? I'll go.
Yeah, okay. Go for it. I think we had given you the floor anyway.
I'll go. I'm in there. I love a uniform. And I'm actually like, I love the shirt that I'm wearing today. I got it at a thrift store a couple of months ago with my daughter. So I'm feeling this. But I love a uniform. And I've been wearing a jumpsuit for the past few days, like this orange button up. I wore it in our rehearsals, like this orange button up, just like, it's kind of like, a little bit of like a sexy mechanic type of look. And it's utilitarian yet fitted. And I like to wear it like for days and days and days in a row because it does everything for me. So that's what I am today.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Sexy Mechanic. Love it. Peter, what about you? Where are you at today?
Yeah. So I actually, as Stephanie was talking, I thought, what am I actually wearing today? And I just put on a fresh shirt on top, just, for purposes of show, because I'm actually wearing, I'm actually wearing exactly the same clothes that I wore yesterday, down to the socks. And that's kind of where I am. Like, I just, I'm feeling a little bit like, part of me feels a little bit like a lovely piece of warm fleece that is out of the washing machine and still wet. That's how I'm feeling today. And I'm just hoping it'll dry out and just be a lovely warm piece of fleece. That's what I want.
Oh,
Well, we'll see if our conversation can, I don't know,
bel-
spin you around the tumble dryer a little bit.
I believe it will. I believe it will.
Cool. And Gemma, how about you? How are you doing today?
Good. I think even before the pandemic, before we all felt this way, I was always rocking the two-piece sweatpants outfit, like sweatshirt, sweatpants, even before this. And then now it's just has holes. So that's a staple of my fashion. But I also have been getting into linen and feel really excited about my new New England. Is that linen?
It's linen. It's linen.
Yes. And I feel like there's something about like returning to like old hardy fabrics that are like from the earth, and there's something about linen that's really like tough but delicate at the same time. And as a kid, I thought linen was horrible, and now I'm really starting to fall in love with it in my New England life. So a spring New England linen outfit would be my choice now.
Nice.
That is terrific. You know, when I was young, one of the promises I made to myself was that I would never get the kind of job that you had to dress up for and then come home and change out of the clothes you wore to the office into clothes that you would actually wear. And now I actually have a job where I have to dress differently at work than I would in real life. Until now. Now I can just, at least from the waist down, I can just dress exactly the way I want and go to work and say to my students, "Oh, it's so good to see you. How is everyone today? Let us be serious," while I'm in my sweatpants. It's great.
Like, what is the clothes that you have to wear to work? What's the like uniform?
Well, so the uniform, you know, it depends. I mean, I have a friend who wears a three-piece suit every day to work at the college. I gave up neckties some years ago because I lost all confidence in being able to choose neckties. But I wear, you know, a button-down Oxford shirt. I wear slacks. I have a belt. You know, you're right, a belt.
bring it all together with a belt. Nice.
The belt. My father-in-law always insisted that I had to wear a belt. He thought it just looked horrible if I didn't have a belt. So you know, you put those things on, and then you get home from work and you change into your sweatpants, for crying out loud.
I thought the job you were referring to was being an actor and going home and taking your costume off. That's what I assumed you meant. So in both cases, I think you've become that person.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm always dressed for rehearsal.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming into the room with us today. It's nice to hear all the different places. Our guests, feel free to. We could keep talking about clothes for forever. Let's not. If you'd like to share how you're feeling in terms of pieces of clothing, feel free to put that in the chat in order to bring yourselves into the space as well. But as with our meetings or our times to chat, when one of you have just performed, we'll come to you first. Peter, you just finished a mammoth weekend. How are you? Where are you at?
I'm. Thank you for asking. And Catherine had actually sent me a text Sunday night or Monday morning, which I didn't answer because I didn't have the wherewithal. But I can answer it now.
Oh, great!
It's a similar kind of question. And I don't know. I mean, I really want to know how Gemma and Stephanie deal with this. What always happens to me, always, when I close a show, is that I feel pretty good for a few days. And then along about Wednesday, I think, oh, I didn't do that part right. And oh, I could have done this other thing. And I become very self-critical. This time, the ending has been a little different. So I got home Sunday night, not feeling very good. And only because of my own performance, and I wasn't satisfied with it. And then Monday morning, I got up and I got out the script and I started to make some revisions. Wow. And I started to get some ideas for different ways to do a couple of the moments in the play. And so I'm sort of accelerating the process of being critical, I suppose. But it was wonderful because all along we have treated this, and NHTP has treated this as work that is not finished. Mm-hmm. And my tendency always is to say, no, you've got to arrive at the definitive performance, mm-hmm. which doesn't exist. I mean, it's just a trap to even think that way. And since that wasn't the goal this time, I could wake up on Monday morning and say, all right, that part of the process is done. Now I can get back to work. What would I want to change in the script, having had this experience? And, oh, that scene could work in this other way. That would be really elegant. Ah, yeah. So I can go back to work on it. Yeah. And it can continue. And magically, I didn't feel bad about Sunday because Sunday was just a step along the way. And actually, that was a really good step. Now I can go into this other thing. So that's sort of where I have come. It makes me, I have no idea what happens next. Mm-hmm. But I've printed out a new version of the script and put it into a new clean file folder. So when it's time to go back to it, I can go back to it. And even realize that the script that I have doesn't have to be the final script either. Mm-hmm. That it can remain a work in progress, or potentially a work in progress for a long time.
Peter, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is a dancer and a choreographer about this idea and the development of a piece and the gift truly that it is to be able to keep working on a piece and having it develop and change and evolve, and the evolution of these theatrical or dance pieces, and that it really is what should be happening with, there's not just, and I'm done, and it's the most brilliant piece and I can't touch it. Like this has been so, it is allowed like for you to be able to look at it and go, oh, okay, oh yeah, like this has been such a gift to be able to allow for that space of knowing that there is room, that there's an evolution to these pieces, and that has been, and it doesn't mean that you're not trying your best and putting your heart and like your soul into it, but it's this gift of evolution of a piece, and that you can look at it and go, oh, okay, I'm going to do, or like the first night I walked off of the first night of the show, I forgot the last line I had written of the show. I forgot it. Boop, fell out of my head, out my butt, couldn't remember it, fell out. Didn't even realize I forgot it until I walked backstage and I was like, oh my God. And Catherine, you said to me, you were like, you didn't even say anything. You just went, it's the first of 5,000. Yay. And like, it was such a relief to like realize, oh, it's not just the first of 3 and that's it. It's the first of 5,000. And that just made me go, oh, okay, let's have some fun. It's okay. What's a line here or a fallen thing there? It's not really, that's not the point of it or of this process, right?
Right.
Mm. I mean, I wasn't looking at the script 2 days later, Peter, but I love that. That's also that journey going like, that's awesome.
Yeah, Gemma, you've led us into, what it was like post your performance. I don't know if you want to share any of that again, but or also now that you're so many months past, where are you at now with your process? Because you performed eons ago, right? Like
yeah. I definitely have. I mean, for me, it's the feeling post-show. I mean, immediately post-show, there's still so much adrenaline coursing through your body that for me, I'm just like buzzing. Like it's not even joy so much as it's just like a zzz feeling that keeps me sustained a little bit through those first, few hours off stage. But I personally find that like immediately after a show is done, I feel so unbelievably drained, like emotionally. Like it feels like I've given birth. I mean, I've never given birth, but I've been to births as a doula, and it feels like all the energy and effort that it takes to get it up and made, and then you get on stage and then the curtain closes and now it's over. And it's so, I am often just like very sad and empty after a show is done. And I think through this process, I shared with you guys that I've had to learn how to be delicate in that time, to like, I couldn't go back to I wouldn't be kind to myself if I revisited the show that week. I would tear it up. So for me, it's not a reflection of like, what did I do when I was on stage? More of like, what did it take for me to get on stage? And then the aftermath is a complete sort of devastation feeling. And then I slowly build myself back up, like my serotonin levels start to return. But yeah, this many months out, I now feel hungry for it. I feel like sort of chomping at the bit to get back in there and see what more kind of magic can be made. So I feel I like to give myself time. I don't like to rush. So for me, having this amount of time is perfect to be like ready to, it feels new again. It feels exciting. So yeah, I've enjoyed the many months, but now I'm like ready to jump back in the saddle.
You know, the months are, they really are a gift, aren't they? I was thinking, usually I act in, 4 shows a year, something like that. And this has been the only acting I've done in the last year. And and there are probably all sorts of insecurities and reasons why I'm like that. But to have all of those months just to be gestating a single project is so wonderful. And to get to this point in that process, not to the end, to get to this point in that process and say, wow, all of those months for this one thing, what a great way to spend the time. Rather than, oh, I did this show and this show and this show and this show. No, it's just one thing. But give it the time and space it needs. And that's been a great lesson, really, for me.
Yeah, it's interesting from a like producerial point of view. I'm definitely also feeling the gift of time is hugely important, because it just shifts everything. It helps shift towards that feeling that the process is the work, which feels very New Hampshire Theatre Project, but like, that it is that journey. But when you are scheduling at a certain rate, then you got to come in, you've got to come out. You each had an opportunity to like live on your set for a little while, and watching that from the outside was really interesting, and it's definitely got my brain ticking through how that can be done, how arts organizations can support that and make that work. Because if we're working towards a rehearsal schedule and we come in and we block on these days and we do this and then it's this and then we're on and then the 3, right, we can't help but feel like opening night has to be important, right, because all we're doing is kind of rushing to a finish line. But there's the time, the expansiveness, which also in some respects also wasn't all that long, but for each of you, and not for particularly for Gemma, who had to perform within like a month of the contract, but like a month and a half.
Short straw.
But it was also when other noise of life disappears. What do you think? What changes might you make in your process moving forward, given that gift that I've heard you all speak about of time and space? Is there anything you are shifting about the way you want to work as an artist?
I'll jump in there. Yeah, for me, I mean, you and I have spoken like the whole critical response, Liz Lerman way of approaching work, approaching the creative process and sharing and questions and your own internal answers. And I feel like from the start of this, I kept saying, I'm not going back. I don't know what that means yet, but I'm not going back. And before the show, I kept going, I'm not going back. And I wasn't sure what I meant by that or really where that was going. But now I know. It's like, now that I had this experience of feeling supported and my vision was very clear, or I was able to help it become clear, and working in a process with people that I know we were all there to play and have fun and create something. I just don't want to go back to another, like, I'm going to level criticism on you and then you're going to change and then we're going to do this. Like it was conversations. Like we just had conversations, and I thought that was such a supportive and exciting way to create something. And those conversations really helped to support what was happening. So that's something I don't want to go back to, and I don't know how that's going to look. I don't know what different places, you don't know, but maybe it's also knowing what your boundaries are too, about what you want and what you don't want, or how you want to work or how you don't want to work. So that's something I definitely think about. Or going back to not performing or not creating my own work. I think that's another part too, that I'm like, now that I had this taste, I'm just going to eat up more and more and more and more. So that's one place I'm at.
I mean, some of the stuff is, I feel like I've shared with you guys months ago, but something I thought of was that I realized through this process, I came in, to a theater company to do a theater show. And I thought, okay, I guess I am in the theater world and I'm a theater person now. And so I thought initially that I had to do things in a particular order to live up to what that experience might mean, or the expectations. And what I found was I wasn't really getting very far in that way. And that once I really threw all that out and did what felt more honest, which was like putting a soundtrack together or building a puppets or drawing or making a costume, that those things came so easily to me, or came to me more quickly, I should say, or more clearly, the image. And so I sort of I felt like I built the show backwards, like all the visuals and the sounds and the physicality. I knew, okay, that's all there. And then I filled in the gaps. And at the time I wasn't quite sure, like, is this allowed? Am I allowed to do this? But now I think I will definitely carry that with me, that, it's whatever way you go, whatever path you take, that's your path. And for me, it's sort of like circling around on the outside edges of the heart, and then finally like trouncing on the heart in the like last 10 hours before the first show, kind of thing. So I think I'll carry that into my future projects.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Brook tells the story, and I don't remember if he was directing the play or if it was a story that he had heard about a very well-respected British actress, in the middle of the 20th century. And the director couldn't figure out what she was doing in rehearsal. And finally he said to her, I don't understand what you're doing. Can you just explain to me what you're doing? And she said, I'm kneading the bread. And he was like, what? I don't even know what that means. Okay. And then 2 weeks later, he went back. He said, you're doing something different, but I don't know what it is. And she said, I'm letting it rise. And so it's a great thing. I mean, I'm just following what Gemma said, that to find a way to move into rehearsals, and first of all, and in the first instance, to kind of take ownership of them as an actor and to say, this is what I am working on. And the director's working on what the director's working on, and I'll help. But I have my own agenda for today's rehearsal. I'm just kneading the bread. I'm just letting it rise. I'm just working on this one thing. And that's it. And that probably takes some, gumption to just sort of stick to your guns and say, no, I'm an artist too. This is what I'm doing. And if you're, if you're not doing a solo show, it's really important to be able to do those things in rehearsal with other people. You can't rehearse the play by yourself if it's not a solo show. So even if it is a solo show, you often need other people. So finding the gumption to make the process your own, and for me, coming out of this, that's sort of because I've been thinking about where did this idea come from and where did that idea come from, and I don't always know, but it was most often the result of time and of sort of accepting, okay, I've got this idea, and that's the idea now, and it might change. And then a few days later, or a week later, or 2 weeks later, it changes. And you say, okay, now it changed. And I don't have to cling to what it was. I'm in a different place now, and then it might change again. And that takes a lot of trust, I think, and a lot of patience, just to sort of let things percolate or something, to let the bread rise.
Yeah, and not to be held to that expectation of this is the thing and this is exactly the thing, because performance is living and breathing, and if we define it, like, then we're painting a picture, right, that stays the same, that isn't ever going to change. That brushstroke is going to always look like that. And I don't think that's why people come to the theater. I think people come to the theater to see the stroke actually be made, and otherwise you're just performing a carbon copy of something. And if we this is exactly how I'm going to do it, this is what I'm going to, like, of course we've talked a lot about the choices we've had to make along the way, right? We have to know that there is going to be an 8-foot large, moon on the stage that's going to talk, but I remember having a conversation, Gemma, with you about how do you keep that, even that thing that is not going to change, that moon's going to be that size, but like, how does it still live and breathe in that moment? Because otherwise is it theater? Is it living? Is it breathing? And I think we often think of, like, play script or words, which all of you did. You all wrote words and put them on a page, and they created plays in your own right. Again, is a living blueprint. It lives and breathes because the actors live and breathe. And if it doesn't have some fluidity, it's why I always hate that it's like actual paper that gets inked and everything, because it's so, I wish we had like some Harry Potter magical like Marauders map thing that like swirled up and worked, and then you could swirl it away. There's future playwriting technology. But I think it's a living, breathing art form, and so it's got to live and breathe in the process as well as the product.
Yeah.
That was a great part of the experience last weekend, was very often finding myself in a place on stage and just sort of noticing, well, this is very, very different tonight. and okay, it's very different tonight. It's just very different tonight. And so what is it? Tonight it's different than it was last night. And it doesn't make a lick of sense then to try to go back to last night, because you're in this other thing. So okay, so then as an actor, I'm there thinking, so what is it? What is it tonight? Because it's, oh, now that's coming. That came. Why did I say it that way? That's so. And where does that lead me? And to be responsive to whatever little differences are happening, and just to notice them, be responsive to them, and say, well, that's what the play is tonight. That's what it is. And my job is just to play the play as it is right now. And it'll be different. It's supposed to be different.
I'd love to.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Like, just Peter thinking again, or Gemma, like about the right afterwards, like the couple of weeks or the couple of months. I mean, Peter, you're at what? You're at like out, was it 3 days, 4 days? Like
Yeah, it's day 4.
Yeah. I was still on the couch watching Top Chef over like episode after.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it was great. I was like, I'm just going to eat and watch Top Chef, but like, which was just perfect. But this was also just kind of like reflecting, and we're in a reflective space. This was also like, I've been able to actually now watch a couple of the shows of my performances. And I don't know if this is like the way that we all have worked together, or the way we set up our rehearsal spaces, or whatever it is. This is really the first time I have been able to look at my performance and not rip myself apart, and not be like mean to myself, or be like, oh my, or why'd you do that? Or look at that. Like, some of the first times, maybe the first time I really am able to look at it and enjoy it, and be like, oh yeah, look what you did. Like, all right, like, just be like, pat myself a little bit, but also look at it critically and go, okay, I think I want to move. Like, I can't wait to rehearse this again, because I want to see what it looks like without that little part in there. Or that's a part I want to just kind of move that quicker. What does that look like? And instead of taking it, like, instead of internalizing it in a negative way, I'm able to internalize it or externalize it in this excited evolution again of it. And it's the first time I've experienced that with my work. And that's been really thrilling to just like, because I know every choice that I made and why I made it, and I feel so good about it. Even if I want to change something, I'm like, I know why I'd like to change that, or try to change it, or move this around. And that's been, I don't know if either one of you, like, I mean, Peter, you're picking up the script, or like Gemma, you're like, yay, let's get going again. Like, it's really fun to feel that. And I interrupted you before, so I hope I didn't.
I haven't watched yet. I don't know if I've had a link yet, and I mentioned to CJ, I don't typically like it. Although after Saturday, he said, I came off stage and he said, it's okay for you to watch that one. Okay, good. So, so I will, and I do, Stephanie, I do trust that I'm going to have the experience that you had. That with a little time away from it, I'll be able to sit down and see it and say, okay, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's, there's some really great stuff in here, and it's giving me ideas. All kinds of ideas.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to that. It's like, it's hard to explain. For me, it's hard to explain, but it's like I've gotten to a place where I know I'm going to be ready to go with this idea, this project, whatever it is, again. And I'll be starting with a much greater degree of familiarity than I usually have at the beginning of a project. And that means it's like the gear is packed, and I can just hit the trail. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. The other thing I'll say is that each of the 3 pieces was really rich. So there's a lot for each of us to go back to. And and work on for a long time.
Mm.
You know, they're deeply felt, they're personal, they're profound, each of them, I think. And so there's just, having spent months and months on it, it would make all kinds of sense to spend many, many more months on it.
Yeah, it's funny because my show obviously was like marketed for as a kids show, but we didn't have any kids in the room. And I mean, which ended up being great. It was fine, but it was funny to hear from people at home who would share with me that their kids were talking to me on the screen. And so a big part, and like answering Sleepyhead's questions. And so a big part of why I'm excited to do future iterations of this show is like, I feel like I definitely had to maybe compromises sounds like too negative of a word, but really did have to make a lot of compromises for my style to make it work during the pandemic for the maximum capacity, for the massed audience, for the camera, for all this stuff, because I'm used to doing shows almost entirely made up on the spot in front of people and talking to them and pulling them on stage and touching them and probably like giving them things I shouldn't be giving them and making them drink stuff, and so I had to like adjust a lot of stuff that was out of my wheelhouse. And so I am really excited, like once it's safe. Well, first of all, excited to see what this show would be like with a full room, even if it's still adults, and how much more interaction I can get, because 12 masked people, it's hard to tell a response when you can't really see their face. But also to see like, what would this show look like with a room full of kids, and what are they going to be shouting out at me, and what, opportunities for evolution the show can have in a safer world. So that's like a big part of what I'm excited to get into whenever it's safe. But.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys this as well, and then obviously I want to make sure that if there's any other thoughts or questions or reflections from our additional guests in the room tonight, please feel free to share, as we'll be wrapping up shortly. But you were performing solo on stage, and so we talked a lot about the conversation that happens between artist and audience, or between artist and artist on a stage, and that was a very different conversation because of the current moment. And I wondered if you had any reflections about anything that you'll be taking from this process moving forward, or things you really are really glad will maybe stay in this very specific time period, about the conversation between artist and audience during the creation and presentation of work, and what it means to now present and perform to people who you're not necessarily hearing the laughter and the reflection. What did that feel like for you?
I think it really, and we say it in theater, like, I say to students, it's like, it doesn't matter if there's two people in the audience or 100 people, you gotta perform for all of them, right? And we say it. And as a performer, you're like, I want 100 people. I want all the people in the audience, right? Of course you do, because that means they're coming to see you, right? But we didn't really have that luxury of having, we had 13 at most, maybe, or whatever, or at most. And I think it really kind of put that, yes, in person. And then there was people out there, which was another part, which I had more fun with than I thought I would. But the audiences that were, either like a, rehearsal or maybe a smaller like audience, it was thrilling to have such an intimate space. And really, truly, I felt like when it was a smaller amount, I really was having a conversation with them, because I could hear them or feel them in a different way than if you have 100 people. It would turn out to be a gift as a performer to have less people physically in the space. And I enjoyed that a lot more than I expected. and not to get hung up on a number. It's a good thing to kind of remember going forward. It really doesn't matter. Like if you have one person that's there to see you, you give that person everything. And sometimes it's the best experience or most enriching. So that was an unexpected discovery as a performer. Yeah.
It was definitely, well, it wasn't my smallest audience, I'll say that, but it was my smallest audience alone. Like, so I've done a duo show with this tinier audiences that we had. And so I think I walked into this being very worried that I wasn't going to be able to bring enough energy as one single person into a room with that few people.
Interesting.
And I definitely like proved that I am, and like I can do it, but I definitely felt like I could feel how much more lifting I did as a performer with that not just few people, but specifically because I couldn't see them in the way that I normally experience performing. And just, I think it was in the air for me personally. I think maybe because I went first, even during the day before the show, and certainly during the show, there were moments where I'm thinking, am I too close? What if someone in the room has COVID? We're going to get a lawsuit, And so for me as an artist, as a performer on stage, I definitely felt like I was like really, it was requiring probably more energy from me than normal to just keep everything afloat with all the pain and anxieties and realities and this small audience and the distance and the whatever, which was really rough. But I definitely think it was a good exercise in like and I learned a lot about myself, but it was rough. It was really rough. And when I watch the video, that's part of what I notice is how hard I'm working to be like, and this over here, and this, and yeah. And it's like, whoa, like, I've seen videos of myself in past shows, and there's much more ease and much more like, and we're going to walk over here now, because you can feel the focus. You can feel that you're holding the tension. And I felt like in the show, everyone's so spread out too. It's not like they're all in a clump of 12 people. They're like back there and up there. And so it was really hard to like hold the reins at times. But I think still it was a great learning experience. And I'm glad we did it. I think it's like one of a kind that we all did it.
Totally.
Yeah. I felt that too. I really don't know what to make of it, but the relationship to the audience in-house, maybe it's because there were, heaven knows I've played for very small houses and smaller than that, but maybe it's because there are so few of them. I was very aware of, or my imagination was very aware. I was imagining what each one of them was responding with, and that wasn't always all that pleasant. If you've got a crowd, then you can sort of ignore some things and select other things and say, oh, what a great crowd. But when you've got, I don't think I ever had more than 8. If you've got 8 people in the room, they're 8 individuals, and you're sort of aware of these 8 individuals. So that was kind of, having said that, I had 2 advantages. One was we had a plant in the audience for each of my performances playing the part of Miranda. So Emily Carell was there one night, Corey was there the other 2 nights. And so I always had a friend in the audience. And somebody whose job it was to really engage and pay attention. And so I always knew that person was there. I couldn't see her, in part because of the way the lights are, and in part because the way my show was lit. There were a couple of times when I was looking directly into a light, and then I was completely blind for minutes after. But the other advantage I had was that opening day, Stephanie gave me some advice about the camera. And this is the thing that terrifies me, because I don't know who's there. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what sort of judgment they're making. And what experience are they having? I have no way of knowing. But Stephanie said something that made me realize, oh, you know what? They're having whatever experience I imagine they're having.
Ah.
That's it. And how great is that? And so even if I'm struggling with these 8 individuals, I've got the camera here and I can say, oh yeah, but over there are 30 people there, and I know what they're doing. And they're noticing this too, right? Yeah, exactly. That's what, and I have no idea what people watching online were seeing, but that was great advice.
Thank you.
You get to imagine the audience you want. Put them in the camera. Say,
yeah. Thank you, Peter.
That saved me.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that.
We'll be wrapping up just shortly, and I want to just give at least a second of silence for if any of our guests have anything they'd like to add or share or come into the room.
I do. That's okay. Sorry, I've been here the whole time. I just didn't think you wanted to watch me eat my dinner. So they were all 3 solo shows, and they were all original shows, but they were all very different. I mean, Gemma's was a clowning piece about a character who is and isn't herself, right? Yourself. Stephanie's was a a piece about your life, right? And then Peter's was a piece from a great work of literature in which you played several different characters. So this might be a little bit of a question for you too, Catherine, but in what ways were they similar and what ways were they different?
Yeah, I love that question. Yeah, what echoes did you see in each other's pieces and in your own work? What a lovely question. Oh, I see, like Gemma's like, hello. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, one thing I noticed was that we all dealt with the issue of if you're in a solo show and you have this solo protagonist character, how do you portray other characters, or are there other characters? And I think we all took in some crossover, but I also think we all took our own way, our own paths in how we wanted to interpret what another character looks like, acts like. How do we use our, the sort of theatrical devices to show them? So for me, I was like, I'm going to make a bunch of puppets out of wood and then have my mom and my dad and friends, we have the moon's voice here tonight. So I felt like I was cheating personally. I was like, I'm just going to have other people be in my show, and that's allowed. So that was one thing. I also know that Stephanie's and mine, I felt like I joked, or I think we joked at one point of like, Stephanie's show was like the grown-up version of my show. It's like all about dreams and like, growing older and anyway, so I think there's a lot of crossover similarities.
Yeah, to that point, I interestingly saw fathers in all of the pieces.
Yes.
Yeah.
And perhaps, more covertly in Peter in your piece, but maybe just because you are a male in the group of artists, I couldn't help but, see that we were talking about fathers all the way through, and then saw a father on stage. So yeah, thanks for asking the question, Jen. I hadn't actually ever articulated, but there's something about fathers in
Totally.
There was also, I'm just thinking of this now, but in a way we begin with a very, I hope I can say this, Gemma, but no, I mean it as a compliment, a very, a very childlike experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the experience of someone who has grown up and is looking back at her life, and then the experience of a man of more advanced years. So we get these 3 stages of life, and in a way, all of them encountering something about hope, aspiration, dreams, how those things get disturbed, how they might be achieved. Those sorts of things followed all the way through.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. And that, of course, there was no plan for that. That was just, there's no prompt that said, do something about hopes and dreams, you know.
It's like the Sphinx thing from Oedipus Rex, where he's like, you know, what crawls in the morning, walks at night, and is on 3 legs, or
Yeah.
That's like our shows.
That's like our shows. That's right. That's exactly right.
Do you think we talked about dreams because of the current moment, or do you think it's just good fodder for theatre regardless?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
well, I wrote the outline for my show before the pandemic started. So I definitely knew for myself that dreaming was a major feature of what, you know, Sleepyhead was wrestling with, but it certainly took on a new or deeper meaning once we're in the pandemic. And I think if you guys remember on my opening night, and we had our, you know, monthly call, and I'm like, you know, having a heart attack that I had to go get on stage that night. And I think I told you guys, I think I started crying, and I was realizing in that moment that you had made, Catherine, I'd made my own dreams come true through the process of getting this show up and my first time doing a solo work. So I definitely, and who would have thought it would be in a global pandemic? And certainly dreams feel like something we've lost, but also in some ways all we have right now. So I think, yeah, you're right. In some ways it is timely.
Mm-hmm.
I think also that the dreams are real. So, you know, at a time when we're wondering about where are we and what's going on, that somehow the dreams help us know what the real thing is. That was definitely true in Gemma's show. I think it was true for me as an audience member. I think it was true in Stephanie's too. This look back at who am I really is somehow encaptured in the dream.
Well,
more than in the sort of day-to-day world.
Yeah. And that time, right? What is time? It's, you know, doesn't mean anything. It's what is, when you're reflecting, when you're in a dreamlike state, that's not linear. Or if your memories are so visceral, what do you mean it was 20 years ago or 5 minutes ago? That means nothing.
Right.
And theater is like about creating those dreams too. And this was a dream come true, but you know, time is nothing anyway.
When the pandemic feels like a dream, it's like feels so surreal, like what we're living in, that it does, you have that sense of like, are we just gonna wake up tomorrow and we all just imagine that this horrendous, it's like, I mean, dream, like nightmare dream, but you know, there's something in that dreams are surreal, or a surreal way of understanding, processing our reality.
Yeah, you're so real.
I also want to just uplift another comment in the chat that CJ said that he found all 3 very natural extensions of each artist in a way. And I would reflect that as well, that a chance to say, this is who I am, this is my artistry. And I encourage and support each of you to continue in your continual quest for your artistry as you move forward, as you develop these pieces, as you develop the next pieces, as you bring your artistry into every room. Be fully in the room in the way that you want to be there. You know, we started this season, you know, by asking the question, what are you waiting for? You know, and I also started this experience with all of you saying, what are you waiting for? What's been holding you back in creating this work or a work like or a piece of solo work for you? What are those barriers, and how may we remove them? As we just kind of wrap up here, I wonder if you have any final reflections on a next step. So that with that idea of, you know what, I'm not going to wait for anything. What comes next for each of you? Stephanie, what about you? What comes next?
Besides world domination? Let's say, I mean, I want to just do it again. Like, I guess, like, I want to take this into the next step of, and if the next step, like, I guess I take myself, I'm always joking. I think I take myself a little bit more seriously now, in a sense, like, oh, this is really what you are. Like, you are a performer, you are a writer, you have something to say, you have a very clear, this is the universal you, to me, talking to myself, because I talk to myself all the time. Like, oh, you really do have a very clear point of view, and you got to say it. And so I think the next step is doing it again and again and again, and then doing the next one, and then doing the next one. And so just am looking to do it again. I'm not sure where that lands, because who knows what theater, I'm not sure where it's going to land. Hope it doesn't take a year. I'm really excited. So I always want to do it again and then make another one. So in the simplest way, that's what I want. And world domination. That's all.
Cool.
I'll go. I guess for me, aside from wanting to tour and wanting to workshop it a ton more, get it in front of a bunch of kids, I also have been working on adapting it for, a TV show. And I really feel passionate about that, and have a real vision for what this little character could do for some little peanuts around the state in particular. So that feels exciting, and certainly another new new territory for me. I don't really have a lot of experience in any sort of like film or anything, so it's exciting, and yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
And world domination.
No, I don't want to be trusted. Like, I can't be trusted with that job. I sleep in too late. I'm like, no way. I'll need a nap. I don't want to be in charge.
I think I'm going to let it rest for a couple of months, and then I think it will be important to come back to it again in order to confirm that this is that this is a process, not something that I did and it's done. Even if I never perform it again, to take it back into some sort of workshop rehearsal kind of process, and to see then where it goes. And after that, I'm curious. This really began with a single image, and I'm curious about what the next image will be, and then what develops out of that image. So that's about all I can say about it.
Well, thank you so much, all three of you, for giving us the gift of your artistry over the last 6 months. It's been a joy in a time where we have not had the individuals and the energy that we would want to have in our little 50-seat theatre in Portsmouth West End. We what has kept us going is the energy that you've each brought in with your productions, and with your collaborators, as you've brought some life into that building and presented theatre in a time where many theatres are still closed. For our YouTube streaming audience, if you're out there, I'll also just say thank you to our SoloStage sponsors, Piscataqua Saving Bank, JCM Management, Hub Entertainment, and We Feel Good, and also to our SoloStage patrons. We had individuals who were able to support each of these artists in a particular way. I think there is something quite remarkable about the current moment, and I do kind of really believe that the next moment should be a sort of renaissance, maybe the good bits of the Renaissance and not so much some of the other stuff. But that is also when patronage of the arts really took flight, and so it's really quite magical to have individuals who supported this program in this way as well. And so yeah, we'll just close up as we typically have done every other session, our final artist conversations together. Although, as we always say, the conversation doesn't end here, it continues, the artistry continues. And the nice thing about this network of artists is we can keep swirling around each other's work for the rest of our lives. Are there any final words or gifts or thoughts that you'd like to leave as we close our circle here tonight?
I want to say thank you.
Yeah.
It was such an honor to be brought in to do this, commissioned, real professional like. It was a wonderful, wonderful gift. So thank you.
Yeah, it was a real honor to work with you guys and be in your company, and to be in your company was really an honor. You both are, I admire your work, and Catherine, you're part of that. And I admire everyone's integrity greatly. And so to be included in such high artistic integrity was tremendous. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I would just echo what Gemma and Stephanie said, and that I really appreciate the diversity within our group, the fact that we're each doing something different. And I think that has just extraordinary value. You know, we've talked about discovering value of the performing artist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful to be in your company.
Thank you, everyone. Well, Zoom endings are weird, so I'm going to hit end, and we can all just go, you know, pour ourselves a drink or sit in the dark or cuddle our teddy bears or read a good book or meditate or whatever we feel, how we unwind at the end of the night. And at some point, again soon, I'll see each one of you in the theatre.
Mm-hmm.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see each other soon.
Yes.